Colorado Territory, 1873. Sleet whipped across the plains like tiny daggers as the sun dipped below the western mountains. Adam Fletcher urged his tired gelding forward, the only movement on the desolate stretch between Silverton and nowhere. A man of 25, he'd learned early that the frontier was no place for anything but work and solitude. 5 years of ranch building and cattle driving had etched his handsome features with a premature seriousness, though his lean, athletic build and clear blue eyes betrayed his youth. "Just you and me, Thunder," he murmured to his horse, his breath forming clouds in the bitter air. "No one to answer to, no one to worry about. That's how we survive out here." Adam had built his small ranch alone, convinced that attachments only led to heartbreak in a land that took more than it gave. His father's death to frontier fever and his mother's subsequent decline had taught him that love was a luxury the West could not sustain. Better to be alone than to watch someone you care for wither under the harsh reality of frontier life. The sleet turned to heavy snow as darkness fell completely, the temperature plummeting. Adam squinted through the white curtain, spotting a faint light in the distance. His original plan to ride through the night suddenly seemed foolish. Thunder stumbled, a reminder that even the strongest eventually faltered against nature's fury. "All right, boy, we'll find shelter," he conceded, steering toward the distant glow. As he approached, the light revealed itself to be a small cabin, smoke curling from its chimney. Adam dismounted stiffly, his cold-numbed fingers pulling his hat lower as he approached the door. 3 sharp knocks, and he waited, shuffling his boots against the gathering snow. The door opened to reveal a young woman, perhaps 20 years old, with warm brown eyes and honey-blonde hair pulled back in a simple braid. She wore a practical blue dress with a woolen shawl wrapped tightly around her shoulders. Her delicate features registered surprise, then cautious assessment. "Ma'am," Adam said, removing his hat. "Adam Fletcher. I apologize for the intrusion, but my horse and I are caught in this storm. I'd be grateful for shelter until morning, if you could spare it." She hesitated, one hand clutching her shawl tighter. For a moment, Adam thought she might refuse, and he couldn't blame her. A woman alone had every reason to be wary. "Julia Ryder," she finally said, stepping back from the doorway. "Come in before you freeze to death." This simple act of mercy would change everything, though neither could have known it in that moment. The cabin was modest but well kept, with a cheerful fire and simple furnishings. Adam stood awkwardly just inside the door, snow melting from his coat onto the wooden floor. "Your horse should come around to the lean-to," Julia said, reaching for a lantern. "No sense in him freezing while we stay warm." Together they settled Thunder in the small shelter attached to the cabin, where a placid mule already stood. Adam noticed how efficiently Julia moved, her hands quick and sure as she helped arrange blankets over his horse. Back inside, she ladled stew from a pot hanging over the fire. "It's simple fare," she said, setting a bowl before him. "It's more than I deserve for intruding," Adam replied, the rich aroma making his stomach growl. "You're alone here?" A shadow crossed her face. "My father passed last winter. Pneumonia. I've kept the place going since then." "A woman alone? That's dangerous country, Miss Ryder." Her chin lifted slightly. "And what would you suggest, Mr. Fletcher?" "Abandon the only home I have. Marry the first man who offers, just for protection." The fire crackled in the silence between them. "No," he admitted, "I suppose not." As they ate, Adam couldn't help noticing the well-tended cabin, the carefully patched quilts, the spotless dishes, the small shelf of books. Julia Ryder might be alone, but she wasn't merely surviving. She was creating something resembling home in this unforgiving place. "You have family nearby?" he asked. "None," she replied. "Father and I came from Pennsylvania after Mother died." He had dreams of finding silver. A faint, sad smile touched her lips. "Found enough to keep us fed, not enough to get rich." "And you stayed after he passed?" She met his gaze directly. "This is my home now. The mountains, the sky, even the winters. I won't be driven away by difficulty." Something stirred in Adam's chest. Admiration, perhaps, or recognition of a spirit as determined as his own. It unsettled him. That night, sleeping on a pallet near the fire while Julia retreated to the cabin's single bedroom, Adam told himself that come morning, he would ride away and not look back. Attachment was vulnerability, Invulnerability got you killed out west. He'd learned that lesson too well to forget it now. Morning brought brilliant sunshine and temperatures that made the previous night's storm seem like a dream. Adam readied thunder, thanked Julia for her hospitality, and prepared to ride out. "Which way are you headed?" she asked, standing in the doorway with her shawl pulled tight against the morning chill. "South, to my ranch near Durango. There's another storm coming tomorrow," she said, looking at the mountains. "Worse than last night's, if the signs are right." As if to confirm her words, a massive eagle soared overhead, flying lower than usual, a sign Adam's own ranch foreman had taught him meant heavy weather approaching. "I need supplies from town," Julia continued. "If you could wait an hour, perhaps we could ride together. Safety in numbers on these trails." Adam's instinct was to refuse, to keep his distance, maintain his isolation. But the practical rancher in him recognized the wisdom of her suggestion. Besides, he owed her for the shelter. "Already both animals," he said. The ride to the small settlement took most of the morning. Along the trail, Julia pointed out features of the landscape, where to find the best huckleberries in summer, which creek never froze even in the coldest weather, the cave where a mother bear had raised cubs last spring. "You know this land well," Adam observed. "Father taught me to read the mountains like others read books," she replied. "He said a person who understands the land will never truly be alone." The words struck Adam strangely. He'd always viewed the frontier as something to be conquered, survived, never as a companion. Their arrival in the settlement of Pine Creek, little more than a general store, a saloon, and a handful of cabins, caused immediate stir. Adam noticed how men's gazes followed Julia, and how she kept her eyes forward, her expression neutral. At the general store, the proprietor greeted Julia warmly but eyed Adam with suspicion. "This here's Mr. Fletcher," Julia explained. "He's passing through. Help me bring in supplies before the storm." "Fletcher?" The shopkeeper's eyebrows rose. "The rancher from down Durango way?" Adam nodded, surprised to be recognized this far north. "Heard you've built up a fine spread," the man continued. "Single-handed, they say." "I have good men working for me now," Adam replied, uncomfortable with the attention. "But yes, I started alone." Later, as they loaded supplies onto Julia's mule, Adam noticed a group of rough-looking men watching from the saloon porch. One detached himself and approached, tall, with a pockmarked face and cold eyes. "Well now, Julia Ryder," the man drawled. "Pretty as ever. Still playing at being a mountain woman." Julia's spine stiffened. "Mr. Becker, that cabin of yours sits on promising ground," Becker continued, ignoring Adam completely. "My offer still stands. Sell to me. Save yourself the hardship. Winter's only beginning, and a woman alone." "She's not alone," Adam interrupted, stepping forward. Something primitive and protective rose in his chest. "And we need to be heading back before the weather turns." Becker's gaze shifted to Adam, measuring. "Don't recall asking for your opinion, stranger." "Wasn't offering one. Just stating facts." Adam kept his voice level, his hand casually near his holster. A tense moment passed before Becker spat into the dirt. "Another time, then, Julia." He retreated to the saloon, but his eyes promised future confrontation. As they rode away from town, Adam asked, "What was that about?" Julia's face was tight with anger. "Hiram Becker fancies himself the future mining baron of this valley. My father found traces of silver on our land before he died. Not enough to mine profitably now, but Becker's convinced there's more. He's been trying to push me out since father passed." "Has he threatened you directly?" "Not in words," she replied. "But things happen. My garden was trampled last spring. A warning shot near the cabin when I refused his first offer." She glanced at Adam. "It's why I was cautious when you knocked last night." Adam felt a surge of respect for her courage, followed immediately by concern. "You should report this to." "To whom?" she interrupted. "The nearest marshal is 2 days' ride. By the time any law arrived, there'd be nothing to prove." The sky darkened as they approached Julia's cabin, confirming her prediction of another storm. Thunder suddenly shied, nostrils flaring. "Something's wrong," Adam said, drawing his revolver. They approached cautiously. The cabin door stood open, swinging slightly in the rising wind. Inside, devastation awaited. Furniture overturned, Julia's few possessions scattered. On the table lay a folded paper weighted down with a bullet. Julia read the note, her face paling. Becker says he's giving me one last chance to sell before winter makes me desperate. Her hands shook slightly. He says next time, it won't just be my belongings that suffer damage. Adam surveyed the wreckage, fury building inside him. This violation of Julia's home struck him on a level he hadn't expected, as if something sacred had been desecrated. I'll help you put things right, he said, already riding an overturned chair. As they worked to restore order, the storm descended in full fury. By nightfall, it was clear Adam wouldn't be leaving, not with 3 feet of snow already on the ground and more falling. That night, after they'd repaired what they could, they sat before the fire in silence. Julia stared into the flames, her expression unreadable. What will you do? Adam finally asked. Stay, she replied simply. This is my home. I won't be frightened away, even alone against men like Becker. Julia's eyes met his. What choice do I have? Running means losing everything. Staying means fighting, but at least I'm fighting for something that matters. Her words resonated uncomfortably with Adam. What was he fighting for on his isolated ranch? Survival, yes. Prosperity, perhaps. But something that mattered? He wasn't sure anymore. 3 days passed as the storm raged. 3 days of close quarters, of shared meals and quiet conversations. Adam learned that Julia had been engaged back east, but her fiancé had refused to follow when her father decided to seek his fortune in the West. She spoke 4 languages, taught herself to hunt, and knew every constellation visible in the Colorado skies. In turn, Adam found himself sharing stories he'd told no one, about his parents, his struggles to establish his ranch, his dreams of breeding horses that could thrive in the harsh Western climate. Julia listened without judgment, asked questions that showed genuine interest, and laughed at his rare attempts at humor. On the 4th morning, Adam woke to silence. The storm had finally passed. Outside, the world was transformed into a glittering white expanse. It was time to leave. I should head south, he said over breakfast. My foreman will be wondering if I've frozen to death in a gully somewhere. Julia nodded, her face carefully neutral. Of course. You've been delayed too long already. As Adam saddled Thunder, something felt wrong, like putting on boots that no longer fit. The thought of returning to his empty ranch house, to days of work without conversation, to meals eaten in silence, suddenly seemed hollow. Julia, he said, turning to where she stood watching him prepare to leave. I can't in good conscience leave you here alone, knowing Becker's threats. I've managed this far, she replied, though her voice lacked conviction. I'm proposing a partnership, Adam continued, the idea forming as he spoke. Winter's setting in. You need protection, and frankly, I could use help with the books and correspondence for my ranch. Come south with me until spring. By then, Becker might have moved on to other prospects. Hope flickered across her face, quickly masked by practicality. And what happens to my claim while I'm gone? Becker could move right in. We'll register your absence at the land office in Durango, Adam said. Make it official that you're temporarily away, but maintaining your claim. Julia considered, her practical nature weighing options. A business arrangement? Strictly practical, Adam assured her, ignoring the strange disappointment that accompanied the words. You'll have your own room, your reputation intact. Come spring, I'll escort you back myself if you wish to return. 2 days later, they departed for Adam's ranch, leaving Julia's cabin secured as best they could. The journey took longer than usual through the snow-laden passes, but as they traveled, Adam found himself pointing out landmarks, sharing stories of his own experiences in these mountains, mirroring how Julia had opened her world to him. Cresting the final ridge, Adam's ranch came into view, a sturdy main house, bunkhouse, barn, and corral nestled in a protected valley. Smoke rose from chimneys, and even from a distance, they could see figures moving about the buildings. It's beautiful, Julia said softly. It's home, Adam replied, then amended. My home, I mean. His foreman, Walter Simmons, a grizzled veteran of 3 frontier wars, greeted them with surprise that quickly turned to careful curiosity when Adam introduced Julia and explained her temporary stay. That evening, after Julia had been settled in a room previously used for storage, Walter cornered Adam in the barn. Interesting development, the older man observed. Never thought I'd see the day you brought a woman back to the ranch. It's not what you're thinking, Adam said firmly. Miss Ryder needed assistance. I'm simply providing it. Walter's weathered face creased in a knowing smile. Of course, just assistance. The following weeks brought adjustment for everyone at the Fletcher ranch. The men, initially awkward around Julia, quickly appreciated her cooking, her organizational skills, and her willingness to treat injuries with gentle competence. Adam found his account books transformed from chaotic scribbles to orderly records, his correspondence answered promptly, and his home gradually changing in subtle ways. Curtains appearing at windows, flowers drying in bunches for tea, the scent of baking bread replacing the perpetual smell of leather and sweat. One evening in early December, Adam returned from checking fences to find Julia teaching two of his youngest ranch hands to read by lamplight in the kitchen. The scene, domestic, peaceful, full of quiet purpose, struck him with unexpected force. This was what a home should be. Later, as they sat alone by the fire, Adam asked, "Do you miss your cabin?" Julia considered the question. "I miss knowing it's safe," she admitted. "But this?" She gestured to the warm room, the comfortable chairs, the neatly arranged shelves. "This feels right somehow, like I'm contributing to something larger than just my own survival." "You are," Adam said softly. "I didn't realize how much was missing here until—" He stopped, suddenly aware of dangerous territory. "Until," Julia prompted. "Until you showed me another way to live," he finished simply. The approaching Christmas season brought a new dimension to ranch life. Under Julia's guidance, the bunkhouse and main house were decorated with pine boughs and red berries. She organized a shooting competition with prizes of home-baked pies, taught the men to sing carols around an upright piano Adam hadn't realized was even playable, and created an atmosphere of celebration that transformed the ranch from a place of work to a place of community. Adam watched these changes with growing wonder and growing concern. Julia was becoming essential, not just to him, but to the entire ranch. What would happen when spring came and she returned to her mountain cabin? The thought created a hollow feeling he refused to examine too closely. Christmas Eve arrived with clear skies and bitter cold. After a festive dinner with the entire ranch crew, the men retired to the bunkhouse, leaving Adam and Julia alone in the main house. They sat before the fire, sharing a bottle of rare brandy Adam had been saving for a special occasion. "Thank you," he said suddenly. "For what?" Julia asked, firelight playing across her features. "For showing me that the frontier doesn't have to mean isolation. That survival can include joy." Julia's eyes softened. "And thank you for showing me that independence doesn't have to mean being alone." Something shifted between them, a recognition, perhaps, of how deeply their lives had intertwined. Adam leaned forward slightly, drawn by forces he'd denied for weeks. Julia's breath caught, her lips parting in anticipation. A violent pounding on the door shattered the moment. Walter burst in without waiting for a response, his face grim. "Riders coming fast. Armed. At least 8 of them." Adam was on his feet instantly. "Get the men. Positions we discussed for raids." As Walter hurried out, Julia asked, "Raiders? This close to town?" "It happens," Adam said grimly, retrieving his rifle from the rack. "Usually despisers or outlaws looking for supplies and horses." He handed Julia a pistol. "Stay inside, away from windows." Outside, Adam organized his men behind the defensive positions they maintained for just such emergencies. Behind water troughs, the low stone wall, the woodpile. The moon illuminated the approaching riders clearly. "Hold fire until they're in range," Adam ordered. "Let's see what they want first." The riders slowed as they approached the ranch yard. In the moonlight, Adam recognized the lead figure's pockmarked face with a jolt of anger. "Becker," he muttered. The mining speculator reined in his horse at the edge of the yard. "Fletcher, send out the rider woman. We've got business to conclude." Adam stepped forward, rifle ready. "Miss Ryder is under my protection. Whatever business you think you have, you can discuss it with me." Becker's laugh was ugly. "Protection? Is that what they're calling it these days?" He turned to his companions. "Hear that, boys? The lady's got herself a protector. Leave now," Adam called clearly. "You're trespassing on private property." "Not leaving without the woman," Becker returned. "Her daddy owed me money. Lots of it. She knows it, too. Been avoiding payment." It was a transparent lie, but delivered with conviction. Before Adam could respond, the door of the main house opened. Julia stepped onto the porch, the pistol held confidently in her hand. "My father owed you nothing, Hiram Becker," she called. You're here for my land, nothing more. Get back inside, Adam hissed, but Julia stood firm. Becker's face twisted with malice. You're coming with us, Julia, one way or another. That silver vein under your property is going to be mine. Silver vein. Adam looked at Julia in confusion. There isn't one, she said, her eyes never leaving Becker. Father's last essays proved it. There's silver, but not in quantities worth mining. I tried telling him, but Becker's convinced himself there's a fortune there. Becker spurred his horse forward. Enough talk. Take her. What followed was chaos. Gunfire erupting from both sides, horses rearing in panic, men shouting orders and curses. Adam lost sight of Julia in the confusion, his focus narrowed to defending his people, his land. A searing pain tore through his left shoulder. Adam stumbled but kept firing, dropping one of Becker's men from his saddle. Walter appeared beside him, steady as always, picking off another attacker. Gradually, the ranch hands gained the upper hand. 3 of Becker's men lay wounded in the yard. 2 more had fled into the darkness. Becker himself was cornered against the barn, bleeding from a graze to his thigh. It's over, Becker, Adam said, approaching cautiously. You're finished here. Not quite, Becker snarled, and lunged sideways, toward Julia, who had emerged from behind a water trough with an empty rifle in her hands. Adam didn't remember moving. One moment, he was yards away. The next, he was tackling Becker to the ground, his wounded shoulder screaming in protest. They struggled in the dirt, Becker's knife appearing from nowhere, slashing wildly. Pain exploded across Adam's ribs, but rage and protectiveness drove him forward. His fist connected with Becker's jaw once, twice, until the man went limp beneath him. Adam. Julia was beside him, helping him up, her face white with concern. You're bleeding. It's nothing, he managed, though the world was beginning to spin alarmingly. The last thing he remembered was Julia's arms supporting him as darkness closed in. Adam drifted in and out of consciousness for what seemed like eternity. Fragments of reality penetrated his fevered dreams. Julia's cool hand on his forehead, Walter's gruff voice giving orders, the smell of medicinal herbs, and always, Julia's voice reading to him from books he didn't know he owned. When he finally woke fully, weak winter sunlight was streaming through his bedroom window. Julia sat in a chair beside his bed, her head drooping in exhaustion, a book open in her lap. The sight filled Adam with a tenderness so profound it ached. Julia, he whispered. Her eyes opened immediately. Adam, thank God. She reached for his hand, her own trembling slightly. We feared the fever might take you. How long? His voice was rough from disuse. For days, she replied. The knife wound wasn't deep, but your shoulder. She swallowed hard. The bullet passed through, but infection set in. Adam tried to sit up and winced. Becker. The marshal from Durango arrived the next morning. Walter had sent a rider immediately after the attack. Becker and his surviving men are in jail, facing charges of attempted murder and assault. And the ranch. Julia smiled, running smoothly. Your men are quite capable, and Walter has everything well in hand. Adam looked at their joined hands, then at Julia's tired face. Something had changed during his illness, or perhaps it had been changing all along, and he was only now brave enough to acknowledge it. I thought I was going to die, he said quietly, and all I could think about was you. That I'd never told you how much you've changed my life, my understanding of what matters. Tears welled in Julia's eyes. Adam, when I built this ranch, he continued, I thought I was creating a refuge from a harsh world. But it was just another form of isolation. You showed me that true strength isn't found in walls or defenses, but in opening yourself to others, in creating connections that sustain you through the hardest times. Julia's fingers tightened around his. I was so frightened of losing you, she whispered. These past days, watching you struggle for life, I realized how completely my heart belongs to you now. The confession hung between them, fragile and precious. Adam raised her hand to his lips. When you're well enough, Julia said. I should return to my cabin. No. The word was gentle but firm. Julia Ryder, I love you. I want to build a life with you. Here, if you're willing, or at your cabin, or somewhere new entirely. It doesn't matter where. Home isn't a place. It's what we create together. Tears spilled down Julia's cheeks. I love you too, Adam. So much that it frightens me. Then we'll be frightened together, he smiled. It's a dangerous thing, loving someone on this frontier. But I've discovered it's far more dangerous not to love at all. Spring came early to the Colorado Rockies that year. The Fletcher ranch bustled with activity as cattle were rounded up for drive to summer pastures. New calves were branded, and wedding preparations transformed the main house. Adam and Julia were married beneath an arch of wildflowers on the first truly warm day of May, 1874. The entire ranch turned out, along with neighbors from miles around, and even the marshal from Durango who had arrested Becker. Walter Simmons stood as Adam's best man, his weathered face unusually emotional as he watched his boss exchange vows with the woman who had transformed their lives. "I offer you my heart, my name, and my protection," Adam promised, his voice carrying clearly across the ranch yard. "Not because you need protecting, but because loving you has taught me that true strength comes from standing together against whatever life brings." Julia, radiant in a dress of pale blue silk, replied, "I give you my trust, my love, and my partnership. You offered me shelter for one night, and I give you a lifetime of love in return." After the celebration, as twilight descended on the ranch, Adam and Julia stood on the porch of what was now truly their home. In the distance, the mountains where they had first met were silhouetted against the darkening sky. "We should visit your cabin this summer," Adam said, his arm around his wife's waist. "Make sure it's still standing." Julia leaned into his embrace. Perhaps we could build something new there, a summer place for when the valley gets too hot. A place to take our children someday." Adam's heart swelled at the thought. "Children," he repeated softly. "A family." "We already have a family," Julia said, gesturing toward the bunkhouse where laughter and music indicated the celebration continued. "We've just made it official." Looking out over the ranch, at the land he'd once seen as merely something to be conquered, Adam understood finally what he'd been building all along. Not just a ranch, but the foundation for a life richer than he'd ever imagined possible. The frontier that had once seemed to demand isolation now held the promise of connection, of legacy, of love that could weather any storm. "Thank you for taking shelter with me that night," he whispered against Julia's hair, "for showing me that even in the wildest places, we can find home in each other." Julia turned in his arms, her face upturned to his. "Always," she promised, and sealed the vow with a kiss that contained all the warmth and promise of their shared future.